Good morning in Finland and Canada. Good afternoon in Singapore and Australia. I want to begin by thanking OPIA for organizing this webinar, as well as all the survey participants that I spoke to, I guess, in the past weeks to find out what was really important to them about culture transformation and building a people-centered organization that brings humanity, meaning, and purpose into the organization. So what I found out from speaking with the participants in the survey was what was really important to them was how do you map and measure a workplace culture? How do you make something that's typically intangible tangible so that they can make improvements and improve their workplace culture? The second thing was they wanted to find out how do you get people on board when changes are made, right? It could be changes due to new systems being implemented or mergers that happen in this globalization world. And finally, people also wanted to know, how do you deal with conflict? How do you build harmonious workplaces where people feel respected, where their diversity is respected and integrated into the changes? So this is what I'm going to be speaking about today. So who am I? Well, my name is Joanna Barclay. I'm a global keynote speaker. I speak on conscious leadership and culture transformation. I'm also the CEO of the Culture Leadership Group. Now, I've been doing business transformation for over 30 years. For 18 years, I've been a professional facilitator, and I've been working with leadership teams the past 10 years doing cultural transformation. So our mission in Culture Leadership Group is really to inspire conscious leadership, to build values-driven, sustainable organizations. And why are we doing that? Because our vision is to see organizations taking care of the well-being of their people, their profits, and the planet. So why Finland? Well, as you'll see in the center, my son-in-law is from Finland. And last summer was the first time we were there, visiting Henko and visiting Turku and Kustavy. And in a few years' time, my daughter and son-in-law and family with 2 grandchildren are going to be moving to Finland. So it's very important. Finland is, I think, going to become my second home. Also, my husband, his 2 best friends now in the world are Risto 1 and Risto 2, who also happen to live in Finland. So it really is going to become my second home. When it comes to the work that we're doing and why we're doing this webinar, it's really to share information about culture transformation tools, because what people wanted to know was how do you improve their workplace culture? So to do that, what you have to be able to do is be able to map and measure your culture if you want to improve it. So being a professional facilitator, what I love most is being able to see the impact that inclusive group processes have on people and through the engagement process. And these tools are very inclusive because they engage people in the process of change. And what they do is they find out what really truly matters to people. And they provide the metrics, powerful metrics, so that support the leaders in building these values-driven organizations. And when you have the metrics, you can actually see where is the disengagement happening, why is there low productivity. All right, so what's happening here? My system is waiting for something, not quite sure what. All right. So I wrote the book, Conscious Culture, for leaders who want to learn how to build workplace culture by focusing on the values of their people and using an inclusive leadership style, one that's focused on people and process. Because from my experience as a facilitator, it's really important to be able to engage people in the process of change, because this really builds commitment. And the book includes case studies, it includes worksheets for every chapter to really enable leaders to gather and engage their teams in the process of change. So let's have a look at what a data plot actually looks like. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you two data plots. One from a team that is, as you can see, having a little bit of difficulty. So what you can see here in this data plot is the top 10 values that this team of 35 people selected to describe their workplace culture. Now, the white dots that you see above the list, these are identified as potentially limiting values. And they're called potentially limiting because, well, sometimes a value isn't limiting. It really depends on the context and what's happening. For example, if control came up in the list and we were assessing a bank, well, control in a banking environment is probably something positive. But if control were to show up in an environment where it did have a limiting impact, then this would be cause for concern. So what you see happening in this workplace are 8 potentially limiting values that are probably causing disengagement and poor productivity. And these limiting values, what they do is they have a negative energy. They create that kind of negativity where people can't bring the best of themselves into the workplace. Now, compare that to Team B and see the list of values that this team selected to describe their workplace culture. As you can imagine, these are positive values. And you get a sense from reading them that these people have a sense of joy and positive energy that they bring into the workplace. Now, if you were to choose, Team A or Team B, have you been a part of an organization that was similar to Team A that had a limiting impact on your workplace, on your ability to bring the best of yourself into the workplace? Now, I want you to think for a moment, if you were part of a thriving culture, what made it a thriving culture? And what I'd like you to do for those people who are attending this webinar, I want you to enter into your chat box, what are the things that made that culture thriving, that empowered you to be able to bring the best of yourself into the workplace? Did you have something like autonomy in making decisions? Was there a high degree of trust? Were you engaged in the decision-making process? I encourage you to use the chat box, because what I'd like to do in this webinar is to be able to share the learning with other people who are also on the webinar. So building trust, yeah. Building engagement, yeah. Anything else that empowered you to bring the best of yourself into the workplace? Thank you all very much. Yeah, feeling respect, friendliness. These are all really important values that people enjoy experiencing when they come into work. Now, what is culture? A lot of people ask this question because it's so intangible. Well, for me, there's a very simple answer. Culture is about how you do things, how you work together. And your behavior is driven by your values and your belief in terms of why you should behave in a certain way. And so why is it so important? Well, because we're going through so much change in the world. Believe it or not, 70% of change leaders fail. And I've been in the business of transformation for the past 30 years, and this statistic has not changed. Change leaders still have a very hard time being successful. And some of the reasons are because their focus is on creating the plans and the strategies and the structures. And what they fail to realize is that if you are asking people to change their behavior, then immediately what you are actually doing is changing the workplace culture. Because if people are changing their behaviors, this is changing how they work together. So your leadership style might need to shift. Your communication style might need to be changed. How you make decisions might need to change. How you handle conflict. You see, an organization is very much like an iceberg. At the peak, this is where the managers and the leaders work. This is where their job as leaders is to look out around the organization and to see what's happening, right? That's why you develop the strategies, because you create a vision, because you're far seeing. And the organization itself is the underbelly, what you don't see beneath the surface of an iceberg. And this is where culture takes place. These are all the intangibles in terms of the leadership style and how people communicate together, their values, their beliefs, the traditions, right? And this is where the saying comes from: culture eats strategy for breakfast. If your culture, if your workplace culture is not in alignment with your strategies, it's going to be very difficult to be successful. And when it comes to actually moving that iceberg forward, guess where you have to apply the most pressure and the most attention and the most energy? If you just focus on the peak, what's going to happen is that iceberg is just going to tip from side to side. But if you apply attention and energy beneath the surface, the underbelly of the iceberg, that's how you move that organization, that iceberg forward in the direction that you're looking to go. So who is it that's responsible for creating culture or transforming workplace culture? Well, it's the leaders. Now, why is it the leaders? It's the leaders because how everybody follows the leader. I will give you an example. I used to work at a company called Digital Equipment, and it was run by an engineer, a Swedish engineer. And because he was an engineer, he took great deal of pride in the quality of the products that he produced and customer service of those products. And as staff, as employees of that company, those caring values translated down into us and how we work together and how we were cared for and how we were treated. And we felt that care. Our career development was very important. Our education was very important so that we could deliver the best in customer service to our clients. So this sense of care, because it was a value of the leader, was felt throughout the entire organization. Now, when it comes to changing a culture, who's responsible? Well, it's the leaders. If you want to change culture, the leaders must change, or you change the leaders. And it's because people follow the leader. They have to walk the talk, and they have to set the example through the accepted norms and behaviors. And so if you want to change your culture, the leaders have to be the first ones modeling those new behaviors or those new norms. Now, I spoke to a couple of people in preparing for the webinar, and they had mentioned how their leaders had changed and that there was now a new sense, a new feeling within the organization because they had new leaders. So what to do once that has happened? What you need to do at this point in time is you have to be able to change the legacy of the past. And you have to select and identify new values and behaviors that you want the organization to adopt. And so it's very important to be able to change the values content of your organization's structures, its policies, its procedures. And also it's very important when you have values selected that behaviors, the expected behaviors that you have for those values are integrated into your performance management systems, into your appraisal systems, so that the managers and the leaders truly understand that you are leading with values and you expect to see certain behaviors. And if you don't see those behaviors, then people don't get their rewards, right? It's very simple, very cut and dry. So the importance of culture. So I'm going to share with you some research that's been done by the top 6 consulting companies in the world. So Deloitte has done research, and for them, the topic of culture is like one of the most important in 2016. It is actually the #1 driver for people's behavior, for innovation, and customer service. And they see it as a competitive advantage. Now, why is it a competitive advantage? Your competitors can copy your strategies, but the one thing they can't copy is your culture. And why is that? Because your culture is you. It's made up of the people in your organization. Your personality, characters, how you treat one another, and that simply can't be copied. That is you. Right? Next, PwC. For them, they see it's as critical to organizational success, to sustainable organizational success. PwC has actually done a cultural values assessment using the tools that I'll be training in the training that's coming up in August in Helsinki. And they did a cultural values assessment including all of their stakeholders around the world. 240,000 people were included in their cultural values assessment. 150,000 responded to the assessment. They had 800 data plots. And through the process of inclusive dialogue and focus group sessions that they had around the world in all of their offices, they picked 5 values that they saw as critical to their success moving forward. Because what you have to understand as an organization, the values and behaviors that got you where you are today, because the world is changing so significantly and shifting in so many different ways, those are not the same values and behaviors that are going to make you successful in the future. So it's really important to stay on top of who you are and the values and behaviors that are important to your people and all of your stakeholders. As well, they see culture as being even more important than their strategies and their operating models. For Ernst & Young, their top 350 companies see profit being driven by their investment in culture, right? And their board of directors said their focus on culture has improved their financial performance. Now, when it comes to assessing the value, the market value of your company, back in 1975, it used to be that the tangible assets were what an evaluation was based on. 83% of your assets were tangible. But today, because of the shift in the workplace, that has changed completely. Now, 84% of a company's assets, market value, is based on intangible assets. So what are those intangible assets? Well, they're your culture and your brand. Culture is what you experience on the inside, and brand is what your clients and your stakeholders experience from the outside in. So culture and brand are directly interrelated. Now, when it comes to measuring your culture, what gets measured is what gets done. So it's very important to be able to measure. And what most organizations do is they measure their outputs, right? To be able to get a handle on how do we improve productivity? How do we improve the efficiency of our organization, right? They measure those all the time. And what they also measure is the outcomes. How are you doing? How healthy is your organization? Is it in a vibrant state? Is it continuing to grow? Well, guess what makes a significant impact on both your outputs and your outcomes? Causal indicators. This is your workplace culture. So what's critical for you is to be able to uncover and act on the cultural needs to be able to improve your performance, because this is what determines both your outputs and your outcomes, by measuring your culture. Now, quite often what organizations are doing, and what they have been doing for about the past 15 years, is they are holding employee engagement surveys. And I have heard this over and over again. Yes, we did an employee engagement survey. And I asked people, okay, what changed? Did you experience a change? And many times people say, no, they didn't experience a change. So one of the polling questions I was going to ask, and what I would like to find out from people, and if you could answer it in the chat box, have you taken an employee engagement survey only to find out after that very little was introduced or changed, or you yourself felt very little impact after an employee engagement survey. Please respond in the question in your chat box. Yeah. So definitely people are responding that changes were introduced, and some people are saying that they didn't experience any changes. So let's move on. So in conclusion, what's important to recognize is that by investing in your workplace culture, what you're doing is you're mapping and measuring it so that you are having inclusive, transformative, engaging dialogues about the changes that people are looking for. And in the process, you're also changing your structures and your policies and your procedures. So what you are doing when you're investing in your workplace culture is you're actually creating something called cultural capital. By investing in your workplace culture, right, you are treating it as a competitive advantage. You are treating it as a capital resource in your organization, just like you are investing in your human capital, in your financial capital, in your IT infrastructure. That's how important your workplace culture is today, because it is probably your number one competitive advantage when it comes to attracting top talent, engaging your top talent, and retaining your top talent. Many people today, when they're looking for new jobs, what's their number one concern? How am I going to be treated when I work there? What's the workplace culture going to be like? So how do you build cultural capital? Well, what you do is you deliberately become a developmental organization. And what does that mean to become a developmental organization? What you want to do is to focus on building a culture that aligns with people's strongest motivation, and that is to grow. We all want to grow. And so how do we do that? Why is it so important to grow? And so what you need to do is you need to be able to align all the programs in your organization so that they are all interweaved around enabling people to continue to grow and develop in their organizations, in their particular jobs. And when they do, what happens is employees become more engaged. And when you have employees that are more engaged, it's extremely valuable for the organization because employees identify with the organization. They care passionately about the future. They bring that passion and purpose into the organization so people can feel it, that extra energy, right? And they're willing to invest their time to make sure that the company is a success. They want to make sure as well that the company is doing the right thing. They want to feel pride in the way that the company operates, and they want to be loyal. Now, I once worked for an organization. They had 89% employee engagement. And you'd say to yourself, with such high engagement, why would they want to do a cultural values assessment? Well, for them, they recognized that their culture, their workplace culture, was an important initiative in order for them to achieve 3 other strategic initiatives that were very important to them. When they did the cultural values assessment, right, they were able to see the new information in terms of what were the improvements that people wanted to experience. And they were extremely happy with this new information, along with the processes that we guided them through by looking at the results. It helped that leadership team create better trust amongst leadership team members, as well as greater understanding. And for them, this was incredibly valuable because that trust and that greater understanding then was felt in their teams and their teams' teams all the way down throughout the organization. So it's extremely powerful when you do stop and assess and find out what really is important to people, what matters to them. So why are deliberately developmental organizations the most successful on the planet? Because they care about the needs of their employees, right? They understand what their needs are. Not only do they care about the needs of their staff, but they also care about the needs of all their stakeholders. And in my book, I write about stakeholder relationship management and treating all of your stakeholders like the parts of your body, right? You wouldn't eat anything, you wouldn't put anything into your body that, that's gonna hurt one organ just for the sake of helping another organ, right? All of their organs are important. And it's the same with your stakeholders, right? They all want to be treated respectfully. They all want to be treated with trust. They all want to be treated with integrity. And so when you do, then you get the highest degree of trust and respect back from them. So what is it that motivates employees? Well, it's a satisfaction of their needs. So what are their needs? In the assessment tools that we use, we have a model that's based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but it's been expanded to include 7 levels of consciousness. So values that employees select are then mapped to these 7 levels of consciousness. The first level is around surviving, because we all need to earn enough to be able to take care of our families and have a sense of security. The second level is around relationships, right? We all want to work in a workplace where we feel cared for, where there's a harmonious environment and there's good working relationships. Next is feeling that sense of self-esteem, right? Being able to grow, feeling confident in the work that we're doing, because we're being trained and there are best practices that are being shared with us. Because people want to be good enough at what they do. It gives them a sense of pride and confidence. The next level is around transformation. People want to be given new opportunities. They want to be held accountable, and they want to be given new challenges and projects. The next level is around opportunities to grow and to be able to fulfill their life's purpose. That gives people a great sense of satisfaction. And growth comes from this level of really feeling that sense of satisfaction, that sense of purpose. It's almost like an internal sense of inspiration and motivation. Next, they want to be able to leverage their contributions. They want to collaborate with other like-minded people. That's very inspiring to them. And then finally, they want to be of service. They want to be able to give back. They want to make a difference in the world. So values, what we value, is incredibly important. And so finding out what are the values of people. Now, we work with values. And why are values so powerful? Why is this model based on people's values and finding out what are the values of individuals? Now, when I gave my first webinar back in 2012, I woke up at 3:30 in the morning with this aha. And I got out of bed and I'm jumping around the room like I found a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow. What I discovered in that moment was that our values are a source of life force energy. Sisu, chi, prana, whatever name you give it. This is an internal life force energy, much like the food that we eat, the sleep that we need. This source of energy is something that inspires people, and it gives us a positive mental attitude. And with that positive mental attitude, it increases greater engagement. Now, not only do values give us a source of life force energy, but they're also the language of the heart. Respect, trust, loyalty. Where do we feel these? We feel these in our hearts. They are emotions, not in the head, but in the heart. So when you have conversations about your values, what's happening is a heart level energy is being felt in the communication with the people. And the beautiful thing about heart is it doesn't lie. People pick up on your energy, right? And it's the truth. Now, the third thing is values are the DNA, our human operating system. Everything that we do is based on our values. Unfortunately, most people behave in an unconscious way. They don't know why they're behaving the way they do. But the reality is they all have certain beliefs and certain values, and that's what causes them to behave and make decisions in that way. When you become aware of what your values are, then you can make better choices in your life. Choices that are more aligned by enabling you to make healthy choices, ones that are good for you and that make you healthier and happier. Now, when we live our values, they inspire us, they motivate human potential, and they also create human connection. So this is the power in working with values. And this is why for the past 10 years, I have focused my practice on working with values, because there is nothing more powerful, there is nothing deeper, there is nothing that is more transformative in an organization or a team or for a leader when they develop consciousness about what their values are, and then how do they want to change and improve their workplace based on their values. So the values chain, this is the influence of values in an organization. So at the core are your values. Your values are what drive your culture, because culture is made up of your values and behavior, how you work together. Your culture drives employee engagement. Employee engagement is what drives your client engagement. So if you've got engaged employees, how do they answer the phone? Do they answer, hello? No. Sorry, call back another day. Or do you have employees that go, good morning, how can I help you? Right? An engaged employee can make such a difference to client engagement. And when clients are engaged, they're satisfied. And when clients are satisfied, that's when you have the highest stakeholder value. And it all starts at the core of who you are as a person, who you are as a leader, and who you are as an organization. How are you consciously creating the culture within your organization based on the values that are most important to you, that are going to empower you to achieve your vision, your mission, and your strategies? So question, and this I'd like you to answer in the chat box. What do you think happens when a company attends to the values of its employees? So if you can answer in the chat box, what happens? How do you feel when your company attends to the values that are important to you? How does it make you feel? Much more positive. Yeah. Everybody is aligned. Yeah. You get more engaged. Yeah. Better results. Yeah, better results. Positive, empowering. Yes. Company success. Yes. It really makes a huge difference when people feel that their organization cares about their values. So, source of personal excellence. When you are able to live your personal values, remember how I said your personal values gives you a sense of life force energy? That life force energy actually creates a positive mental attitude. And your ability times your positive mental attitude is your performance. You can have all the PhDs and master's degree in the world, but if your mental attitude is zero, your performance is going to be zero. Because the law of personal performance states ability times mental attitude is equal to your performance. So now you can transform your mental attitude simply by thinking about and living and feeling your personal values. That's the positive impact that they have. So being able to live your personal values in the workplace increases your engagement. When you increase your engagement, this increases your commitment, and that translates into higher productivity. When you have higher productivity, this increases a company's products, a company's profits. Now, before the webinar, I sent out a link for people to take their own personal values assessment. And this is the link that I invited people to go to, www.valuecenter.com/PVA. Now, what I'd like you to do at this point in time, if you did take your personal values assessment, I'd like you to take it out and have a look at it. Now, the purpose of doing this is to be able to find out more about yourself. What motivates you? What actually gives you that extra energy? And when you find that out, what that does is it enables you to really understand what levels of consciousness that you're operating from. And this is important, so again, so you can make the right choices so that you can really feel a greater sense of fulfillment in your life. So on page, let's move in your assessment. If you move to page 6, you will see a worksheet. And in this worksheet, it asks you to select your top 3 values from your list of 10. And so what I'd like you to do is answer in the chat box, what are some values that you've picked that are your top values? And I'm going to have a conversation now with Jorma to find out what's his top value and to have an engaging conversation. So Jorma, can you please share with us, what is one of your top values?
Okay, I selected the first one which came to my mind, and that was trust.
Trust, okay. Now, what is it about trust that's important to you? Why is it important?
Well, I would say that it makes me feel good to work that kind of environment where there is trust. So then I can, and basically the whole team can focus to do the job, not discussing secondary things.
Okay, so you want to feel that sense of trust. Now tell me, what do you actually do to live that value of trust? How would I know that trust is a value that's important to you? What behaviors do you exhibit?
For example, that people are doing what they are saying, and the small things like being on time on meetings.
Anything else? So people saying, doing what they're saying they're going to do is very important.
Yes, okay. I would say that that's one of the biggest things. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So what I encourage everybody to do is to complete this worksheet. Pick your top 3 values, and then for each value that you've picked, Identify what's the belief. Why is that value important to you? And this is the process of becoming more conscious. Because a lot of times we have values, but we don't know why they're important. And when you stop and you think and you go inside and you access your inner awareness, you're accessing your beliefs. And then ask the question, well, what do I do? What do I actually do to live that value? Now, in chapter 1 of my book, at the end, there's a worksheet. And what I encourage you to do, this is how, using this free assessment for your teams, I encourage you to do this. Have everybody on your team complete this free values assessment, and then come together as a team and share. First of all, start with one-on-one conversations with each other. Have 2 people come together and share what their top 10 values are, why those values are important to them, and then what they do. And what you will notice in that conversation is the energy in the room will start to go up. People will have smiles on their faces. One time I was doing this exercise, I had a group of 50 people, and we had done the assessment, and the assessment showed, believe it or not, 8 out of 10 limiting values. This was not a happy workplace. And at the beginning of the workshop, I asked the people in the room, I said, what do you want to get out of this session? And one man, he stood up and he said, I want people to feel good. I want us to feel engaged because we've been going through so much change. We're not happy. And that was clearly seen by looking at their values assessment. And I wrote it down on the flip chart. I said, thank you. Thank you for that comment. We'll see. And when we got to this part in the workshop where everybody wrote down their top 3 values, what their beliefs were, and why they, how they lived them, and then they started to share with one another, the energy in the room started to go up. Everybody had smiles on their faces. And when I went over to this gentleman and I tapped him on the shoulder and I said, stand up. And he stood up and he looked around the room and his mouth dropped open. He was so surprised to see the power of living their values, of how important it was for them to share. And at the end of the day, they had worked on their top 3 values. They had identified the behaviors that they wanted to experience in creating their desired culture. That group left transformed because they felt empowered. They knew what they could do. They had written down what they wanted their managers to be able to do, and their managers agreed that these were things that they could do. They felt empowered because they had discovered what it was, what their personal values were, and how they could bring those personal values into their workplace. Now, what I'd like to do now is to debrief this exercise. And these are questions that you can debrief when you've had a team conversation. The first one is to discover, okay, what are some of your top values? How do you feel? So, Jorma, can you share with me, what are your top 3 values? You said trust, but what are maybe 2 other values that are important to you?
Maybe I should open the report and look at what I have answered there, but I would say,
what comes to mind as values that are important to you, that you like to experience?
Respect.
Respect.
Yep.
And what else?
Accountability.
Accountability. Okay. So now, how does it feel? How does it feel when you are able to live these values in the workplace and you are experiencing them? What emotions do you feel?
Well, it makes me feel good.
It makes you feel good, huh? Yep. And when you feel good, how does it impact your performance when you're able to live these values? What impact does it have on your performance?
Well, I would say that it has a big impact in sense that then I don't need to worry any other things. I can really focus to do my job, and I can trust others and see that they are also doing what they are promising.
What they're supposed to do. Now, when your values are not being lived, when you can't trust people, when you don't feel respected, when there isn't accountability, how does it feel?
I would say frustrated and demotivated.
And frustrated and demotivated. And what kind of impact does that have on your performance?
It has a big impact, because then basically I cannot put my energy to do the job I should do. And if I'm thinking that if I'm demotivated, it's sure that I'm not doing things best way and with best performance.
Now, I have a poll that I would like everybody to answer. I'm going to launch the poll on the screen, and I want you to share with me an honest answer. If the top 3 values that you've selected, if they were ignored, if they were stepped on, if they were disrespected, would you want to continue working there? So select either yes, you would want to continue working there, or no, you would not want to continue working in that organization or for that team. If you see the poll on your screen, if you could select either yes or no. Do I need to do something? Launch, close. Nobody is answering. Okay, yes. So no. All right. So what we see here, I close the poll. Okay, close the poll. Share. Oh no, share the results. So these are the poll results. 93% said that they would not want to continue working there. So this is the significance of knowing what the personal values are of your people. Because people do leave organizations because their personal values are not being lived. And it used to be that organizations only focused on their organizational values, and they didn't want to know what the personal values are of their people. But now, what we're understanding and what we're learning is that personal values are very important. And so that's why these assessments are so valuable, to be able to see what are the personal values of people, of staff in your organization. So when we conduct our cultural values assessments with the cultural transformation tools, there's 3 questions. It's a very simple process. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes. And there's 3 questions that you are asked. The first one is around your personal values. And the first question is, which of the following values and behaviors most reflect who you are? So this is where we find out what's most important to your people. The second question is around the current culture, to find out what's going on today in your organization. So which are the following values and behaviors most reflect how your organization operates today? Pick 10 values. So here we find out what are your strengths, what are the things that are going well, and this is where we also find out where are the potentially limiting values, where are those places where the energy drain is happening. And then the third and final question is around the desired culture. Which of the following values and behaviors most reflect how you would like the organization to operate? And this is what it looks like. So you see here in the first column on the left, the personal values of your people. Family, making a difference, humor and fun, well-being, continuous learning, commitment, accountability. So you see the list of values that really define what's most important to your people. And in the numbers beside the column on the right, you see how many people picked that particular value. And you always get a list of top 10 values. Now let's have a look at the current culture. You see here, what are the list of values that are important to them? And you'll notice up where the dots are, it says cultural entropy of the current culture is 7%. That means 7% of the values that they picked were for potentially limiting values. But because there's such a small number, they don't appear in the top 10 values. And 7% is actually a healthy organization. And finally, in the desired culture, you see the list of values that are most important going forward. The values that are red are the things that are the same in the current culture. And they've got 6 values, which means, this organization is going in the right direction. But there are some new things that they're asking for. And those are in blue: continuous improvement, continuous learning, accountability, and trust. These are personal values that are also showing up in the desired culture. And so that's why they're blue, because they are personal values. And these are things that they want to see more of. And so in our dialogue, when we have those focus group sessions, we want to find out why people asked for these values. What are the changes and the improvements that they would like to see? And then there's one new value, which is innovation. So what is it? Why is that important? What are some of the things that they would like to see? For Team B, 35 people, this is an environment where you can see in the current culture, there are 8 out of 10 limiting values. Now, if you look at the personal values of these people, you'll notice that they have 5 dots at level 5. Internal cohesion is very important to them. And if you have a look at the current culture, you'll see there are no dots at level 5. So when we look at these assessments, we're looking for alignment. We want to see how many of their personal values are showing up in the current culture. And clearly there are none. This is a culture that has a very high level of entropy. In fact, you'll notice it says current cultural entropy, current culture, 47%. That means 47% of the values that were chosen to describe the current culture are potentially limiting values. So these are the things that are happening that reduce people's performance. And that's what cultural entropy is. So let's take a minute just to take a look at cultural entropy and the impact that it has. What is it all about? Cultural entropy is the measure, right, of the things that create conflict, friction, and frustration in an organization. These are the things that actually cause people to prevent the organization from operating at their peak performance and causes employees to stress and disengagement, right? It prevents them from getting their needs met. And so there's a direct correlation. When you have high entropy, you have low engagement. When you have high engagement, you have very low entropy. So how is cultural entropy created? Well, it's created by the personal entropy of the current leaders or leaders from the past whose behaviors and values got embedded into the structures or the systems, policies, and procedures. So it's really important to have a look at the entropy of leaders. How are the leaders behaving? And this is why we have leadership values assessments. So leaders can find out how their behaviors might be having a limiting impact on their team or the organization. You see, there's a direct correlation. When we do leadership values assessments, we find out what are some of the values that they are bringing into the workplace. Power, demanding, perhaps they're manipulative or they blame, controlling, right? The reality is for thousands of years, organizations have been hierarchical with a command and control style of leadership. But today, what staff and millennials are looking for are a more collaborative, inclusive leadership style. And so that's why it's very important for leaders to be able to understand that there's a transformation and a shift that's being asked of them. And so what happens when you have leadership values like this showing up? Well, you have a culture within the organization that has high entropy. And when you have low cultural entropy of a leader, having a look at what their assessments look like, you'll notice very, very low entropy. And then what does the culture look like in the organization? Same thing, very, very low entropy. So a question that I would like you to think about: have you worked for a leader that has either high or low entropy? And have you noticed the impact that it has on your performance? So I want you, this is another poll that we're going to do. So I want you to notice, have you worked for a leader with high levels of entropy or low levels of entropy? And have you noticed the impact that it has on your performance? And so this is becoming conscious and aware of just how important behavior is. So it does, right? It has a huge impact on performance, how a leader is showing up. Thank you. So now let's have a look at the 9 steps to building a high-performing workplace culture. The first step, and just so that you know, in my resource center on our website, there is an ebook that's been written that has the 9 steps to building a high-performing workplace culture. So all of these steps that I'm going to talk about are written up in this book. So simply go to my website, www.cultureleadershipgroup.com/resources, and you can get a free download of this ebook. So it starts with, the first step is building the leadership team commitment. It's very important that all the leaders are on the bus and they understand what are the compelling reasons for change. And then the second step is doing a cultural values assessment. So this is understanding and recognizing what's working well in the organization, what's important to your people, and what's the desired workplace culture. What are the areas of improvement that people are looking for? And then the third step is about revisiting your mission and vision. Because a lot of organizations, they haven't revisited their vision in several years. And doing an assessment, finding out what's important to people, might actually have an impact and shift your mission. Once you understand where you're going and why you're going there, then you want to select core values and behaviors. And those behaviors really want to be identified and input into the systems and structures of your appraisal systems, your performance management systems, so that leaders and managers know that, living these values is very important. And then you want to identify what are you want to develop those compelling reasons for change. Because when it comes to change, people want to know why, and you need to be prepared to share with your organization why you need to change to remain adaptable, to position yourself for the future, and how to build resilience. When it comes to cultural transformation and actually implementing it, there's 4 things that you're going to be focusing on. First of all, it's the internal values, right? The individual values of leaders and managers. Second is, how are they behaving? So on an individual level, it's important that leaders walk the talk. Third thing is around the culture. What are those group norms and beliefs? And finally, the social structures. What are the group behaviors that people are exhibiting? And what's really nice about the training is that we teach you with the tools how to create personal alignment so leaders know how to walk the talk. We help you identify the values alignment and put values alignment programs in place, because there needs to be alignment between the individual values of leaders and the group norms that they're creating. And then structural alignment. How do you need to change your systems and processes? And then you want to make sure you have mission alignment. So this is 4-way alignment that creates group cohesion. And when you have group cohesion, this is when you have collective action with shared vision and shared values for high performance. So the culture transformation tools that are taught on the program, these are tools for individuals to be able to measure how individuals are showing up in their values, as well as tools for groups, so small groups assessments, there's an evolution report, there's espoused values report, there's a merger report if you're an organization that has merged with other organizations, okay? So how do you define and grow your culture? What's most important? Well, first of all, you want to invest in culture practitioners. And these quite often are members of the HR teams, because these people are trained in organizational development and they really understand the requirements when it comes to systems and processes. Along with that, you want to create cultural ambassadors. For example, Volvo, when Volvo Trucks has been investing in their corporate culture for over 10 years. And each of their managers goes through 2 days of cultural ambassador training. And they've got 500 cultural ambassadors in their organization. So every manager goes through this. And why do they do it? Well, they want to make sure that they measure their culture on a constant basis, right? They're making sure that they've got shared vision with shared values. They're making sure that their culture is aligned to their strategies. They've identified the behaviors, and those behaviors are put into their appraisal systems. Dysfunction is managed, and so the people know what is appropriate behavior and inappropriate behavior. And they do this all through continuous dialogue. So I'd like to find out from the people who are on the webinar, final poll, okay, is, do you see value? Do you see value in your organization receiving training in becoming a cultural ambassador or a culture practitioner? Yes, very good. I'm glad, because that tells me that this webinar has been very successful. So thank you very much. So the CTT, I call it CTT, Culture Transformation Practitioner, is 4-day training. This 4-day training involves learning what the consciousness model is. It gives you a personal experience. So you experience 3 different assessments: a personal values assessment, an individual values assessment, as well as a leadership development report or an individual development report. So this is for your own personal transformation, because we believe that you need to experience this for yourself. And then you're having that personal experience enables you to be able to share these tools with other people in your organization. So when is this training happening? Well, in Melbourne, Australia, in June 26th. In Helsinki, I'm coming to Finland to be able to offer this program August the 20th. In Singapore, it's happening in August the 6th, and then in October the 20th, and then in Ottawa, September the 4th. Now, if you sign up, as a thank you for taking this webinar, if you sign up before the end of the day, June the 11th, you'll be given a 100 euro discount. And just so that you know, when you complete the 4-day training, you will receive with your certification a free small group values assessment with 20 individual values assessment, which is worth 1,500 euros. And we give that to you because we want you to start using these tools right away so you don't lose any of the knowledge. If you want to find out more about the program and have a syllabus, please come to my website, cultureleadershipgroup.com/events. And there you'll see the 4-day syllabus for the program. And you can also go to opia.fi because the same program is put up there on their website. So why do we do this work? Why do you want to create a people-centered organization that brings humanity, meaning, and purpose into the workplace? For me, it's all about seeing people as sources, like the sun, to see them as virtually inexhaustible, a continuous source of energy. And there is no more powerful source of energy than a turned on, empowered human being. So Final polling question. Actually, this is not a poll, this is a chat. I would love to find out from you how this webinar has fulfilled your hopes. How has it met any expectations in training that you were looking for? If you could enter your comments into the chat box, that would be wonderful. Well, I'm not seeing any comments coming up, so I want to end by saying thank you to everybody who has participated. And if you would like more information or if you have any questions whatsoever, please send me an email. It's joanna.barclay@clg-ap.com. You can also come to our website, cultureleadershipgroup.com/resources. I've got a lot of case studies up there, articles, all the workshops, all the worksheets, graphics, tables from my book are also included for free in our resources. For me, it's all about sharing this knowledge so that people can understand just how important and how valuable working on their workplace culture is. So thank you all very much for participating. Mm.